love football for the sake of football. I think it's because so many people get into it for the social part of it, even if they like the sport, like giving up on football, like giving up on playing. I just sort of saw the profession and said, I want to do that.
Even if communication was broken down there, right? Empathy and soft skills weren't being deployed. Hey guys, this is Barry from HYA Football. We've got episode 6 of our podcast. We've got a very special guest with us, Ezekiel Conneff, that is taking a bit of time to hang out with us, explain a little bit of his story regarding his journey within football and within coaching and youth development. So first and foremost, Ezekiel, how are you?
I am good. Happy to be back at Hendon. Thank you for having me.
This is it. It's a second return, shall we say?
Yeah, second, yeah.
Perfect. So just some context of yourself, your background, and kind of your start within football and how it alluded into coaching afterwards. Can you give us a little bit of a snapshot?
Yeah, so obviously played football in general all my life, but as far as an organised setting where I finally got to sort of get feedback on how I played and play with friends and play with people regularly each week, that was about under 14s. So I started quite late compared to a lot of people. Played for about 2 years before dropping out of the game, just because, things happen, the team disbands, you don't really know how to navigate football and find other teams, which I had to do by myself at that age. So I sort of dropped out of organised football for around 2 years, really the entirety of my college. COVID happens, so then that's another year that I'm not playing. But throughout all that time, I got really passionate about coaching, because when I started out playing football, I wasn't really good, to say the least. If any of my school friends ever see this, they'll attest to that. So I got really keen on making sure I knew the things I was doing, training by myself, technical details, tactical details from like a really young age. Even before I started playing organised football, I got really interested in that and doing things by myself, making notes on sort of how I would train myself, how I would give feedback to my teammates, and obviously through that I improved. So that's what built my passion for coaching in general. Sort of decided, not even really from giving up on football, like giving up on playing, I just sort of saw the profession and said, I want to do that. Even if it's not just do it instead of playing, I want to do it alongside playing at least. It's not really something I saw as a backup plan to football as much as it's just something I love as much as football. I love playing as much as coaching. So throughout sort of, 14 years old to 18 years old, that's essentially what I was doing, honing my craft at coaching by myself, getting experience so I can with my school and such. COVID happens, so I don't play for another year, don't get to coach for another year. COVID happened during my gap year, so that meant I couldn't then, go and get more experience coaching my own team, which is what I wanted to do before I went to UCFB to study football coaching and management. But obviously, eventually, sort of COVID, the effects of it subsided. I went to UCFB to do my football coaching and management degree, which is going to be a laid conversation in itself. I couldn't go through that in the introduction.
Yeah.
And graduated, sort of came out of that with a load of different experiences and having met a load of really good people. Started working for Charlton Athletic Community Trust sort of straight away in a new role as an employability officer. So that shifted away from coaching and went more into community outreach work, so helping kids not in education, employment or training from the ages of 16 to 25, sort of into employment or just into sort of a better path if maybe they're pursuing something that isn't too productive or safe for them at the time. And I've been doing that for around the past 10 months and I've just left that. And there's a lot that will be happening now. I can't go into that, but hopefully discussions in the future, this will sort of go over that.
The question is, do you have a break?
Yeah. Not really, but only because it's something I love. I love all the things I do. Community outreach, which is something I'm really passionate about. That's why I pursued it with Charlton. I saw opportunities to coach and things like that. Charlton offered full-time hours to do something else that I was passionate about, so I had no problem going into it. So community outreach, football coaching, studying, I still do online courses to this day. I'm currently completing a level 2 in understanding behaviour in distressed children, just to sort of equip me more to dealing with kids that I'm going to come across on the pitch. So I don't really take a break, but I don't take a break because it's something I love. I don't particularly believe in not taking a break if you know you need one.
Oh, this is it. I think just in those few moments and minutes of explanation and storytelling of your journey so far, Wow, it's such an impact, right? You've got so much passion, so much to uncover and discover for yourself, but also the people that I guess you're working with in a day-to-day basis. When it comes back to the start, when we're looking at, you said the term organised football. Break that down. What was the explanation towards organised football? Was there before that time of 14 and up to 18 exposure to football, whether it was just watching it on TV, hanging out with friends in the park? What was your maybe primary school years looking like around football?
And to be fair, it was all just playing. It was just never, for a team, for a club, in the playground. And obviously that's only going to be as organised as you can make it with a bunch of 7-year-olds, isn't it? But yeah, it was always just playing. Didn't have Sky Sports in the house. Didn't have the money for that. So I definitely wasn't going to get my interest from there. But, you get an old laptop that everyone has their dedicated time to use. Maybe you get an hour and then your sister's got to get an hour. So I'm using that hour to watch Ronaldinho compilations, and I'm going to school trying to replicate it, obviously poorly because, like I said, I wasn't good at the sport. But yeah, it was always just playing. It was never watching as much as I wish it could have been. It was never going to games because there weren't really that many football grounds near me. There was Dulwich Hamlet, but obviously they're not the biggest team in the world, so I wasn't really concerned with them. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah. To all the Dulwich Hamlet fans, we apologise.
I don't mean that really. I didn't know much about football, so I hardly even knew they were a team. But yeah, it was always just playing.
Was it a friendship group? Was there lots of your friends just doing the same stuff, so it just felt right that you were part of the social circles at whether it's in school, after school kind of settings?
Obviously I live in Southwark, I lived in Southwark at the time, so yeah, it's everyone's football mad. No one's really playing anything else besides maybe basketball. At least in my school, that's what it was. So yeah, it was just always about friends. But again, the friendship part didn't really matter to me. I love football, and that's sometimes a hard thing for me to express to people. The fact that I love football for the sake of football. I think just because so many people get into it for the social part of it, even if they like the sport. Like, I think a good example to give is, I don't know if you've ever seen, I think it was on CBS Sports, I think Thierry Henry and that whole lineup. One day he gets asked, what would you be if you weren't a professional footballer? And he says, an amateur footballer. And they all go, he's trying to sound deep again and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's like, not to say I'm the Thierry Henry of Dulwich, but it's like, I resonated with that in the sense of, like, I feel like a lot of people don't understand loving the game for the genuine objectivity of loving the game. A lot of people always say, but you play it with your friends. But once you realise you weren't good enough, you drop out. Like, no, I would coach grassroots for free. Yeah. I would play for free. That's all it comes from. So, the friendship part does play a part, but really and truly, I could have been the only person in my school that liked football, and I would have played football.
I love it. I really, really love it. I think I said it in a previous episode, this is why the world is envious of our maybe development systems or the success the national teams or the Premier League gets. It's because there's people on the community level, grassroots, that are just a burning desire, regardless whether they're going to become a professional footballer. Statistically, probably won't happen.
Yeah, probably won't happen, yeah.
But like you said, that Thierry Henry comment resonated with you so well because it's your true value of, I love the burning desire and passion of what football provides.
Yeah.
Do you know why or what football gave to you at such an early age?
This is the thing, nothing, because I weren't good at it, so I'm getting cussed out half the time on the playground. Obviously, it's like through no fault of my mum, she wouldn't have been able to come to watch my game because I wasn't playing for a team anyways. But obviously, she has her own things to deal with, so I'm just saying, bye mum, love you, and I'm going to play my game and coming back. She's not particularly got anyone screaming on the sidelines for me.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not getting paid. I'm not playing for any of the academy at the time.
Okay, let's break this down. It may not be external or extrinsic motivations like financials or medals or trophies or even acknowledgement from friends or clubs looking to pick you up. What was the internal, the intrinsic motivation it was providing?
That's the thing. I couldn't. That's the weird thing. I just couldn't tell you. I just love the sport for whatever reason. Something about it. Maybe that's something I need to take a look at in the future. Maybe intrinsically look at myself and say, okay, maybe this is why you love the sport. But there's just nothing intrinsic or extrinsic besides the fact that I enjoyed it and that made me want to play it every day. And I can't really explain why that was the difference between that and other things, because I enjoyed a lot of other things. I've got a lot of other interests. I had some then, and I have a lot of other interests now. So it is, I couldn't tell you what football gave you besides enjoyment, but for some reason, the way in which it gave me enjoyment has just meant it's just created a love for the game that I have to this day.
Well, here's a question, because I feel a lot of times in football, especially at the critical stages of primary school, we say the words, it's got to be fun, it's got to be enjoyable.
Yeah.
Do you think that's enough for that particular age group? Like, we work predominantly with that age.
Mm-hmm.
And if we haven't got that environment where it's fun, enjoyable, I don't think it's hard. I think it's a harder sell to add in anything additional,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's medals, trophies, winning leagues, or, well, they won't necessarily win leagues at that particular age, but maybe tournaments. But I guess a lot of children just do their activities because they fall in love, passionate, because of the enjoyment factor.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a valid point, or is there things we're missing within that environment we're trying to instill?
I think it's the argument can be made that it's not enough, but it's definitely imperative. I think it's a necessity at that age group that it should be fun. People can argue it's not enough depending on where you work and what the philosophy of where you work is. You know, if you're working somewhere that wants to produce players at that age group, some people will say it's not ethical to think about producing players, elite players at that age group, but then you might put a bit of an emphasis on winning or having more tangible sort of outcomes for the kids. But for me, no matter what setting you're in, it's absolutely imperative. Whether it's enough is going to depend on the context you're in. But
and the individual, I guess.
Yeah, and the individual, true, yeah.
Because sport inherently is about what's the next step, what's the next level that I can potentially or dream to get to. Maybe, like you said, we're not actually going to get there, but the possibilities of sport and competition allows people to dream and be able to be aspirational towards their future if they put the ingredients of enjoyment, working hard, learning the skills, honing their craft, and so forth. What values are you trying to either uncover for yourself or teach to your group of players, whether it's the primary school, secondary, or older? Like you said, you're working with some adults in your previous role at Charlton. What kind of values are you trying to instill?
First things first is all the soft skills that are going to be applicable to general life, because like we've already gone over, there's a good chance they won't make it. So there's no point with only equipping them with the hard skills relative to football, because if there's a 99% chance they won't make it, they're not going to be able to use any of that once they get out.
Can you break down what soft skills look like versus hard skills?
Cooperation, the ability to communicate with people that do and don't want to communicate with you for whatever reason, with people who can and can't communicate with you for whatever reason, the ability to be accountable, the ability to be professional, the ability to be, just a lot of things that you are going to come across that are going to make someone sort of a person you'd want to meet and speak with if you were a normal person, not just if you were a professional footballer. You know, loads of things that are going to help you in the workplace, that are going to help you even on the pitch as well, but are just going to help you in life. You know, when you start a family, when you're raising your own kid, if you're working with kids, if you're working with a colleague, if you need to help someone on the street, if IWAP wants to talk to you, all these things are the foundation of them comes from those soft skills that you teach at those young ages that are going to help that young person sort of adapt to that situation. So those are the soft skills that I think are going to be really key to helping them.
I'm looking at that and going, soft skills, I believe, is developing the human being, right? Because regardless whether they choose or get into that prestigious situation of becoming a professional footballer, the good morals or good values and belief systems that are poured into them from that early stage of development will help them navigate the professional pressures as there's lots of attention and scrutiny, I guess, when it becomes such a lucrative offering, becoming a professional, because there's millions, would we say, or more, regarding trying to pursue that dream. And then through reality, the competition, people will find whether they're able to actually realistically achieve it or not. When it comes to the harder skills, what does that look like from what you're trying to teach? as a football coach to the player, but even broader, could that extend to maybe the family members of the child who's pursuing football?
Yeah, I think all of those things that I just said can be hard skills in themselves in the way that you relate them to the game. So, for example, as a parent, accountability comes in how am I acting to ensure that my son is acting in the same way. Not just because, obviously, in general, yes, your son will replicate, or son or daughter, sorry, will replicate the things that you do. The way in which they're going to act on the football pitch requires them to have a certain temperament, requires them to have a certain level of control over their mind and how they express themselves, because they need to communicate in a particular way on the pitch. So sometimes it's a hard skill in the sense of, yes, accountability is a general skill that will help, but I need to talk to that parent or that child about, say, how exactly being accountable looks like. It can look a number of different ways, but the scope narrows once you're in the football setting.
Have you got an example for accountability as that player? What do they need to be accountable for?
So I'll give an example of a kid that I coached who I obviously won't name. He had this habit of losing his head, and when he would lose his head, he would tackle his own teammates. He was only under 8, so obviously it's not something a kid any older would do probably. But he would tackle his own teammates, try to score, wouldn't, because he was so focused on rushing that the rest of the team would figure out that he was the one that wanted the ball. They'd go to him, they'd cram him. He'd lose the ball, get more annoyed, do the same thing again. Eventually would start lashing out at the other teammates as well. I saw it at the other players as well. And then obviously I'd have to take him off. So now I have to talk to him about not only what is being accountable, but what is being accountable on the football pitch, right? Because being accountable in general is don't take from your teammates, the same way being accountable is don't take from your colleagues, don't steal your colleagues' food in the fridge at lunch or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But in the football setting, it's okay, why are you not meant to be accountable, or why are you not meant to steal from your teammates when you're on the pitch? Well, if I go to my teammate to get the ball from him, now my defender is going to come to my teammate as well because we're both in the same space. Now it's a 2v2, but we're in a really small space, so it's harder to get out. So it's all about sort of taking that generalizable skill and then adapting it to the specific constraints of what the game is. So now if I teach him to not go to his teammate because that's actually going to make it harder for them to score.
Yeah.
But if he goes away from his teammate, he might actually be in more space to receive the ball. Yes, it's teaching him to be accountable, but then that turns into him learning about spacing, obviously, and expanding the space of the pitch and not only making space for his teammate to dribble, but making space for himself to receive the ball. Then I can talk to him about, well, now actually, if you're in space, now your defender might not be as close to you. So now you're going to have more chance of dribbling and going towards the goal. So now, not only does he understand spacing, he understands being aware of his marker as well. So it's taking that generalizable skill and just making it really specific to sort of how you approach the game, and then that's how you sort of teach those specific things.
And I like how you said that where the theme of it's about accountability, it extends into other qualities or skill sets, whether it's, like you said, the hard skill of how to create space intentionally so that your teammate benefits of not being pressurized by not only the defenders closing him down, but if a teammate's closing him down, then there's going to be the natural reaction, what's going on? I have to make a quick decision here. So I guess when we're looking at one theme of a value being taught, it transcends into so many other themes. Like what I listened to there was, how good of a team player are you? How creative are you in your movements? Right? Can you solve the problem quickly? So when we're coming into, do they become a professional footballer or not? If they're just repeating these phases or sequences and scenarios over X amount of years, they're able to hopefully become well-grounded people and be able to solve problems quickly, deal with pressure, be creative, be empathetic to other people and their positions of life or understanding. Are these, and I don't want to force words, are these things you see of a good environment, of a coach or a club or a space where it just naturally oozes out? Or is that something we just have to fight every single day because people are not knowing these inequalities about development?
I think to an extent you will have to fight for it every day just because people are raised differently. That can depend on household, it can depend on culture, it can depend on the situation they're coming from. on a lot of things. So you do have to fight for it every day. It's just the degree to which you're gonna have to fight for it might be different, and that's not just because of, say for example, it's a new kid that's coming in, so they're new, so they might be, you know, they might naturally have the propensity to being more calm or being more composed or being more of a team player. You know, kids are always gonna test boundaries. So for example, once a kid, I don't know, shouts at a player, he might want to do that again, or he might test how much he can shout at the player because he thinks it's gonna get him what he wants. So it might be a fight depending on the kid and sort of where they come from and stuff, but it's always going to be a fight in general because the nature of working with kids is that as they're growing, they're figuring out where their boundaries are. So you're always going to be tussling with them to an extent and helping them realize not just this is the line you can never cross, but this is why. And even though this is the line you can never cross, this is why you might only take it here in the first place. So yeah,
I do like that approach where boundaries and culture, I guess. And culture it's a fancy word. My take in it is culture is just behaviour. Regardless if we want like the best culture or that's terrible culture, if we're making a snap judgment, it's just behaviour and being able to reflect upon it to see how can that serve us the next time round to get a better outcome, a better experience, a better result. When we're looking at that really supportive environment, whether it's you that you've seen in your good practices or the environments that you've been exposed to, what is the natural themes you're seeing come out over and over and over again, where you're just like, this is where I love, right, to see development occur, and it's not just by luck, it's intentional behaviour.
Elaborate on that, because I could go a lot of ways with that.
So what I mean is, when you're seeing good practices, whether it's you being coached in that 14, 15, 16-year-old journey of football, or whether you were part of your education at UCFB and you were like, these are quality lessons I'm learning here. Is that down to just, I've got lucky, I've got the right timing, or how does that become consistently good, that the culture is being established and celebrated all the time?
I think, as far as the lucky part, it just depends on how you define luck. Because obviously I can say, well, I worked hard to get into university. At the same time, I was born in a country where I have the opportunity to work hard, right? Then I was born in a city where I have the opportunity to pursue a lot of opportunities to build my love of the game. You know, if I live in, for example, Wales, where rugby is more popular, for example, I might never play the sport.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I might not play it as much, and all of a sudden I don't play sports because all I played was football growing up. Do you know what I mean? So luck is it's opportunity. Luck is just opportunity meeting preparation, but at the same time there is an element of chance to it. So you kind of have to acknowledge the circumstances you come from and be thankful that you were placed in those circumstances for whatever reason, and then acknowledge the level of work that you did to get there. So in a sense, I do feel lucky. You know, thankfully COVID landed in my gap year, for example, so I wasn't curtailed from all my practical experience once I got into first year. But then at the same time, you know, I had a lecturer on my course called Ricky. You know, he was new. He joined during my time at UCFB. He's one of my favorite guys. He had so many insights. He played in Brazil at one point. You know, that's just pure luck. You know, I might have never met him if I graduated the year or two early or whatever it is. So there's that. As far as good practices, I would say, what's good practice to me, firstly, I think as an educator or as a coach, is diligence, preparation, and good modelling. So diligence in the way in which you do work, so that one, you actually know what you're doing, why you are doing it, you're putting time and effort into how you're preparing for sessions, into how you're preparing your lectures. Then you've got the preparation. So how do you actually prepare to do it? You know, are you punctual? Is everything set up by the time you get there? Are you prepared to deal with all the extenuating circumstances of all the kids? Is there going to be a kid that you know is coming late because his dad don't have a car? Is there going to be a kid that you know is colorblind, so using different colored or different shaped cones, for example? You know, little things like that. So preparation is really key as well. And then modeling is really key as well. So that's just, how do I embody the behaviors that I want to see? Or how does any educator or coach do that? So that's being punctual, being patient, being calm, being succinct, being effective in what you want to do, being direct in what you want to do. And for me personally, I feel like I saw that definitely at UCFB in some of the lecturers that sort of I got to work with. Not everyone will have that perspective. Everyone's free to have a different perspective, but for me, I feel like the way in which I engage with the degree, I definitely got that, and I feel like the way in which they've got to that point where they can say, oh, it's not actually luck in how sort of the lectures that we've got, and we're lucky that they're just good enough to give someone an experience that good, is the fact that they obviously hold themselves to account. The degree changes year after year. Darren, who you know, obviously Darren Smith, he wasn't afraid to say, hey, we're changing this because of this, and the same thing with the other lecturers. This thing is changing because we don't feel like it was effective for the last year. This thing is changing because it was too hard for you guys this year. This thing is changing. We're adding this thing because we think it's going to help you. And the guys 2 years ago when we last had this opportunity didn't get that, but we realized actually would have helped them. So I feel like creating a good culture, creating a culture that's effective in developing people, especially in developing kids, comes with self-reflection and being able to be open and honest about it. But then obviously it comes with those three things. So diligence, being a good model, and preparation.
I love those answers, and I think you've articulated it, explained it really, really well. What you're telling me is because, and I don't think it's now luck, from what you're saying is, yeah, you could have got lucky with the individuals and the stories of connection of what they've bestowed on yourself. But like you said, your circumstances, what I heard there was you're very grateful for your situation. Yeah, born in, this era, born in the situation of an activity, an industry that is very popular, very competitive, but it's lucrative because it gives even the non-professional footballers or the non-professional people to gain in their first few levels and exposure to the sport. And from what I'm hearing of those qualities, diligence, modelling and preparation, you've taken those and you've instilled that into just your day-to-day, I would assume, because it resonated with you of what you believe in as making better impact and practice.
Yeah.
Did you have those thoughts before you were going into these environments? Meaning, I said these are your values. Did you recognise those before they were kind of being explained by external professionals or environments that you were part of?
I recognised them, but for the opposite reason. So essentially because before I went UCFB, I would say nearly all of the adults in my life, bar my sister and my mum, didn't
do those things.
Didn't operate under those values. And that actually made me realise, these things are good because this is the reason that this is not happening. So, little things like, a manager, getting annoyed at me because of something that wasn't my fault, at like a part-time job I would have. I'll just be like, that's just, you could just be a bit more patient. Like if I do that to a customer, you're going to get annoyed at me. If I do that back to you, and obviously I'm the person, like, especially at that time, I would do it back because as a kid, you're going to have attitude. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You're going to be annoyed at me. And now I'm having to be the mature one. So I did notice those things, but in the inverse, I noticed them because adults in my life didn't do it. And to be honest, it was nearly consistent. I could honestly probably maybe count on two hands the amount of positive, not like, I'm not growing up in like a crazy situation where like I've got so many like dangerous people around me or something, but there's people who are like lazy in how they operate and how they interact with other people, and then as a result end up having a negative impact on the other person, whether they realize it or not. I can probably count on my fingers the amount of adults I had in my life that operated under the values that I talked about to make sure that didn't happen and they were actually being positive with people. So, just being diligent, being patient, being a good model to people that, or to the kids that they were teaching, so that one, they would do it back, and two, they would do it when they went out into the real world. So that's how I sort of noticed that.
That's so profound. For you to see what I'd call the title of poor practices being played out in your literally personal life, upbringing when you're kind of at that formative years of development and so influential to senior people, adults, for example. And then for you to go, I'm watching it, I'm observing quietly, and seeing all these outcomes turn out the way I wouldn't want that to turn out.
Mm-hmm.
So you just took that and be able to go, why don't I just play devil's advocate and do the opposite?
Yeah.
For a young person, I go, the question is, the debate or question, are we products of our environment, or are we blessed with evolution and our own freedom of speech or thoughts that we can navigate our own outcomes or our own results?
I think, I mean, obviously the easy answer is a bit of both, but it's the true answer, isn't it? Like, I think we're blessed with sort of those things that make us intrinsically different. You go to, for example, say if I'm talking about like psychology, for example, I remember a study done, I wish I remember who it was by, but you have like different types of attachment types. The parents, a kid can be securely attached, so they might be a bit sad once their parent leaves the room, but they'll calm down a bit. You can have a kid that's like insecurely attached, so when a parent leaves the room, they'll get a bit more upset. You have a kid that's like anxiously attached, so if a parent leaves the room, they go absolutely crazy. That's, I wish I could name it and I could cite it so people could go and look at it themselves, but that study is a clear example of how we can be intrinsically different, and so we do have factors to thank for the way we've turned out that are inside of us, regardless of who or where we've grown up. But I do think we are molded by our environments. We aren't our environments literally, and we aren't who we are by our insides literally. It's just we're molded by the environment. So what we are is the clay, and then the environment is the oven or the hands or whatever you want to call it. That's how I would call it.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, and then what comes to mind to me is self-awareness. And you said in those poor practices of adults, they were potentially lazy or just not aware of the proactive opportunities they could maybe pursue, as opposed to being reactive and disheartened by the results that they were achieving. And great observations, which I think is a coaching quality in itself. Whether you knew that or not is like how it would shape your thought processes moving forward. I look at myself and I would look at some key figureheads in my family and look at that and go, why did they behave in the way they did for that particular scenario, play out over and over and over again in similar situations? And I'd be like, I might, if I just pause and become a bit more patient and reflective of not just wanting to shout out in rage and frustration, but understand why have I got to that emotion, then I'm able to kind of just sequentially know why am I getting to those like threshold moments of frustration and emotions like that. Am I right to think where we've got the debate of good practice, poor practices, it's worthwhile to be exposed and experience both?
Yeah, it's definitely worthwhile. I think ideally no one ever has to experience it because everyone does it. But I think you have to experience both because you will experience both. So if you experience it, not in a controlled setting, as if to say, one day a coach decides to act in a poor manner so that the kid can learn. But if you experience it, at the very least, you know how to deal with it. You understand how it feels, so you can feel a level of empathy if you did it to someone else. And you can already start thinking about the solutions about it before you ever come across it again, whether you do or someone else does it. So, for example, if I go back to that example I gave of, say, a manager, getting annoyed at me when I was working.
Did that happen, by the way?
No, that actually happened. It wasn't. It wasn't a manager. It was like a higher up. To give a bit of context to the story, I guess. So I was working for Just Eat when I was just doing e-bikes. So I was like 16 at the time. Yeah. And I think essentially how it worked was you had 2 disciplinaries and you were fired.
Right.
And you obviously get an email for every disciplinary. Hadn't gotten any email. Got called into the office one day. Had to wait like 2 hours for someone to come. She says, "Why are you here?" I say, "I don't know." Would you show me an attitude? Goes onto a computer, brings up my file. Apparently, I've got 3. So apparently, I should have been fired already. Right. But I've not gotten an email for any. And when there's meant to be a description next to either of them, there is none. So and there's always meant to be one. And I've talked to people what happened to, and there always was one. So she looks at me, looks at the date of one of the disciplinaries, and says, "Okay, there's no description there. So what were you doing on the 3rd of October?" I'm like, "I don't know." And And then she just keeps on grilling me, is even being quite rude to her co-workers. And yeah, I mean, eventually, obviously, I just take the high road. But yeah, I mean, it's you do sort of look at that and say, okay, well, what would I do? First things first is if I was on the other side, I wouldn't treat the worker like that, because I'm meant to just be the intermediary party. Or I'm just meant to be the party that maybe decides what the consequence is. So I have to be unbiased. I can't go into it with a negative emotion, believing this person has been lazy. And obviously, if I would actually look at the context of the situation. So if I've gone onto the laptop and seen there's 3 emails, there's 3 disciplinaries, you've never received an email for any of them, so it's not even been logged to anyone, not even you, and there's no explanation near them. Well, actually, now that's malpractice on our side. Yeah. So now I've got to now tell that worker, or if it's a player, for example, when a player comes to me with something, or I feel like they've done something, and then they tell me someone else has done something, I've got to make sure they know, okay, I'm going to deal with that, because if I want you to be accountable, I have to be accountable. Correct. So it comes to things like that. It's just you have to take those situations in your life and make the best of them. But if you never have those situations, you then don't know how to deal with them when they actually come along. So I've taken so many situations like that I had with adults when I was young, and from those situations, I learned to be fair. I learned how to sort of make sure that boundaries were set whilst being empathetic for what the person might have had as far as reasons for doing it. But I wouldn't have come across that most likely. I would have come across that method of thinking if it didn't happen to me, and I didn't come across adults who were just, rude to me for no reason, maybe because they thought they were going to have a long day. This was at 9 a.m. in the morning that it happened, so she hadn't had a long day by that point. She just sort of chose to do it. But yeah, I think it's good to experience hard things so that you can start thinking about the solutions to them. So by the time I've started coaching, I already know I'm going to be fair. If someone has done something, I'm going to bring both the kids up and resolve that conflict. I'm not just going to tell one kid stop it and then shoot them both off, because then the conflict might start again. They might feel disenfranchised with the team, with the squad, with me as the coach, whatever it is, and that creates a whole another list of problems. But obviously, I don't have time to get into that mindset if I don't experience that before with an adult and then have time to think about the solution for when I actually started coaching. So I've gone on a bit there.
No, but here's the thing, like your real life experiences, whether they were good moments or not good moments or challenges like this particular situation, what it's telling me is I'm grateful for that experience, because now it's shaped the way I can be more effective as a coach, as an educator, because I can see when things don't play out in my personal life where I don't think it's fair, and you're not even judging to a certain extent that individual, you're seeing it from a broader, objective point of view. Yeah. Systems need to be better. Communication was broken down there, right? Empathy and soft skills weren't being deployed. Yeah. And you're seeing all of those mishaps and gaps and going, right, with my growth mindset, I'm going to shape all of those experiences and put it into my coaching to become even better and empathetic and patient. And like you said, if there's a situation that happens, you're going to investigate it until you get the right result, and people will be made accountable, because self-awareness is the forever game. Yeah. How long have you been coaching?
Well, I'm 22 now. You have to give me a bit of time to work it out. I want to say
from about 18?
Probably like 16.
16?
My first experience coaching others was just my GCSE practical exams.
So we're saying 6 years?
Yeah, 6-7 years at this point.
I would say right now, looking at a person in their first, say, 5-6 years, we taught, you may have come across the 10,000 hour rule. Yeah. Yeah, which is roughly 10 years for someone to become an expert or a professional expert of their field, their craft. Yeah. So you're into year 6 right now. I think you've just blown past the next 4 years because of all the experiences you've had of your environment, right? Your growth mindset, your acceptance not to accept things. Like you're just passionate to get the right result because you're so clear on what the vision is you're trying to instill. Yeah. Was that your mum and sister? like you said about those two adults were quite significant because they did the opposite to the rest of your adults growing up. Like, where did that wisdom come from?
It definitely came from, yeah, I would say both actually. I was gonna say just my mum, but both. It came from my mum in obviously more deliberate parenting. It came from my sister in sort of how she carried herself and in arguing with her a lot. So some of those obviously situations that I learned from came from her as well, obviously. But obviously as she grows older, leaves school, goes to university, lives through herself, she then teaches me more things about being patient, gives me more reasons to be patient. So that obviously I don't get into situations so that if she ever needs me, then she can call me as well. So both from the perspective of what they taught me and from the perspective of just seeing what they did, yeah, both of them definitely.
How is sister's older?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. I think when we're looking at role models, and that's what we're alluding to here, is role models should be challenging our thought processes.
Yeah.
Because the way we think currently now, if we didn't evolve as human beings, we would be just at our current state of maybe that's 16, 14-year-old kid growing up. But a role model is that person that's stretching, challenging, and celebrating the times when there's good results being occurred. Yeah. When we bring it back to coaching, and I'm always thinking about this, because we've gone really hazy and fluffy and stuff like that, which I love. Let's bring it back down to when a child or a parent is struggling in their current situation of football, what are the go-to things for them to help them overcome a problem? So let me just give some context. The child's not playing well, right? Or the parent is getting frustrated by their child not playing well. Like, give me just one strategy or way of resolving that scenario.
Well, first thing, I always say as a coach, I'm going to have more rules about parents' behaviour than kids' behaviour. Because they're going to be with the parents much more than me. So if they're only with me 3 hours a week, including the match, obviously they're in school a lot, but then they'll be home with the parents however much time of the day. If that parent is always getting on to them and then does the same thing at football, that child has now no time to rest and recover and think about what they've done, but then they're going to emulate those actions. So if I see a parent getting really annoyed, I always say I don't think you have a right to get annoyed at your child for not playing well. If your child is being rude on the pitch, that's fine. If your child maybe is being unsportsmanlike, that's fine. But not playing well, I always say the only person who has the right to get annoyed at a player not playing well is that player. Everyone else's job is either to support them emotionally or support them obviously much more directly in terms of what can you actually do to be a better footballer. So I'd have a talk with the parent first and I'd say, you need to work on how you react. Obviously, I try to make sure it's digestible for the parent, but...
Yeah. How do they take that? Because if you're asking an adult, especially a parent, I'm going to challenge you on the way you're approaching your child's football, because now you're in my environment and I've got a bit of autonomy towards that ownership or influence. Surely parents challenge you as well, or just agree, nod, but are like, no chance am I being told what to do here.
Yeah, it definitely happens a lot. Parents will obviously not want to hear you advise them on parenting their own child. It just happens in general. Obviously, when you're young as well, they might not say it, but you can tell they sort of, from their understanding, you're too young to maybe know about why they're doing it. But
do you think they've got a valid point from that?
No, I don't think wisdom comes with age. I've met a lot of immature 40-year-olds. I've met a lot of mature 10-year-olds. So I definitely don't believe in that. But it's just gonna happen. You just to take it on the chin and realize I put the effort in now. I'm gonna do what I can for your child. If your child then still doesn't turn out well because of the effect that you're having on your child, now you can't say no one ever warned you. Do you know what I mean? Because someone's been honest with you and come up to you and said, hey, you keep on telling your child to score more goals. He's not even really an attacking player. He enjoys defending. If he doesn't want to sprint up the pitch, don't let him. Do you know what I mean? I just leave it at that. If you then choose to continue forcing that on your child and he drops out of the game by the time he's 12, whether you choose to admit it or not, you're always going to have to admit that, Eze told me this one day. So that's how it is.
I've come across a phrase recently. Do we have to be right, or is the game to win?
Um, I think from a player's perspective, the game is to win. It's then up to the other people within that setting to determine the culture in how that win happens. But I feel like it makes sense for the player to want to win, and you can't be too annoyed at that. Obviously, if now they're kicking and scratching and stuff like that, that's when you step in. But again, that's just creating the culture. You can't ask the player to not want to win. Even if you're playing a casual game, no one plays with the intention of not wanting to win.
Because like I said, if we've got the foundation of the fun and enjoyment, the natural evolution is how do we actually, like game sports life is, how do we get to the next level of development and results?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So when we're looking at now your personal journey, your professional journey, before we go personal, what are you pursuing over the next 12 months or 24 months that lay ahead?
Well, I'm going to continue with sort of the community outreach work and work with young people. I think it's something I'm really passionate about. I think one thing I've come across when it comes to sort of being a productive person and trying to have a positive impact on society is that sports can't be everything. You know, at the end of the day, if 99% of people are never going to earn an income from the sport, you know, it doesn't make sense for me to only try and impact through sport. There's nothing wrong with that, but in the context of me, who I feel like has a lot of experience that would be relevant and beneficial to someone in a community outreach role, there's no reason for me to not pursue that. So that's why I think I'll be pursuing that in the near future, and I'll obviously try and link it to sports where I can. So you know, obviously there's loads of different organisations that sort of link the 2-on-1 sessions that sort of work on bringing people in and using the allure of sport to get young kids in and playing and engaging with them, and then maybe pushing them onto programs that are going to be beneficial for them and stuff like that.
Well, this is the key. I feel sport within society and communities, it's a tool essentially, and we're trying to utilise something that's popular, something that's in demand, and get people to break down these barriers. So I hear right now is if it's community outreach, there's social inclusion occurring. Whether people know it or not, it's how do different cultures come together with the same ethos of they like the activity, regardless if it's football or not, and regardless what culture, background, gender, belief systems, if people are coming with the same like-mindedness, they're able to go and enjoy their time with different types of people. And as a byproduct, hopefully relationships and demographics start to become blended and merged, which is the bigger picture of social inclusion. Do you see sport winning in that battle, or is there such a divide occurring?
No, sport will always win in that battle. I've seen some of the most discriminatory people I've ever met play with people they would never like, simply because it's a sport that they like. Sport is always going to have the advantage in that, especially a sport like football. It's just obviously it then comes to the other barriers to inclusion, or to maybe that person being able to gain a wider mindset. That's what becomes a problem the moment people step off the pitch. That's why sort of obviously I've decided to move more into the community outreach. Obviously I know I'm good at sports. I'll never stop coaching, I don't think, because I really like it. And where possible, I will always include coaching in those roles. So when I was at Charlton, for example, I was always asking to get out there. But sport will never lose that battle, but the battle right now is being lost in other factors off the pitch, and that's why I care right now at least more about community outreach, because we're going to have more than enough coaches, but in my personal opinion, I don't feel like enough people genuinely put effort into those other aspects of community outreach that are going to help people come together, and that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think there's such a big job and movement to bring people closer together, because in society we are hurting at stages, not just stages of our life, but stages of moments of life, like you spoke about COVID earlier, and then that kind of social interaction and relationships was very heartfelt because people couldn't get out and do their normal interaction with their friends and family or colleagues. So yeah, it's a huge part to play, and I just love having people like yourself talk about your craft and be able to be passionate and have so much care around what you do because you know it's making a bigger impact than the purpose of what you're pursuing. As we wrap up, is there anything we haven't necessarily discussed or uncovered about yourself, whether it's from the professional life of coaching or community outreach, or within your personal pursuits of where you're going next?
Well, I mean, it's been a good discussion. I guess coaching philosophy, but I feel like that was more woven into sort of all the things we talked about, because that is what it's about. I could go on and on about all the technical information, all the tactical information. You know, I spent hours watching games, obviously all the work I did at UCFB and such, and all the independent research that I do, of which I do a lot. But at the end of the day, you can get 1,000 people who are all going to tell you the same thing, because technical information is objective, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But sort of the philosophy of why I do things, I feel like it's just been woven into the discussion we've already had.
You pulled that out brilliantly and beautifully over the last X amount of minutes we've been chatting. That my summary is people that I am lucky to just interact with already had that burning desire. I don't have to flip a switch or get people to become motivated about what they're pursuing, because they already got that burning desire. And I keep using these phrases and terms, but everyone I come across so far, it's just like, oh, it's another person that thinks and believes in the same values and core concepts. So I really do appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the work that you're doing in your community, the work you've done here. We didn't even speak about what you've done here, but we'll definitely get you on for another episode to explain and unravel what the work you've done in the past here, but also the work that we're pursuing in the near future. So thank you, Ezzy, for your time. Appreciate everything, and no doubt we'll see you soon in the next episode.
Next episode.
Exactly.
Thanks, Barry.
No worries.